The galaxy was not a quiet place. Stars burned in silence, but everywhere war raged. Alien empires fought each other with deadly machines and unstoppable weapons. Planets were destroyed in a blink. Entire civilizations vanished without a trace. Among all these empires, humans were unknown. Few had even heard of Earth, and fewer still believed humans could matter in such a vast, violent galaxy. Far away, in the edge of a distant star system, a strange discovery was made. On a frozen, rocky world orbiting a dying sun, a small alien scouting team found a human baby. The child had been abandoned, left alone in the cold, fragile, and defenseless. The aliens were puzzled. They had never seen a being like this. Its skin was soft, its body small, yet it had something in its eyes, a spark that no alien could explain. The aliens were called the Vritak. They were a disciplined species. Their society was strict. Every Vritak knew their place, every action measured, every word calculated. Emotions were rare, even frowned upon. To them, the child was an anomaly, something unpredictable, something dangerous, yet they could not leave it to die. Against the instincts of their entire species, they took the human with them. The child grew among them. He learned the Vritak ways, the rules, the fighting techniques, the complex codes of honor. But he was always different. While the Vritak children followed orders without question, the human child questioned everything. He asked why when others obeyed blindly. He watched and learned, not only from lessons but from observing life around him. This curiosity made the adults uneasy. Some whispered that the child was too clever, too unpredictable to be safe. He was small compared to Vritak children, but he was fast. His mind was quick. He solved problems that even older Vritak struggled with. When the teachers gave impossible tasks, the human found solutions in minutes. Slowly, the adults realized this child was not just different, he was extraordinary. But they could not understand why. As he grew, the Vritak gave him a name. Kiran. The name meant light in their language, for they believed he brought something new into their rigid world. Kiran adapted quickly to their ways, yet never lost his human curiosity. He explored forbidden areas of the ship, watched alien stars through observation decks, and learned every trick of the Vritak mind. He became faster, stronger, and smarter than even they expected, yet the galaxy around them was changing. A distant signal reached the Vritak leaders. A warning of a war unlike any other. A massive alien fleet, unknown and deadly, was moving from the far side of the galaxy. Planets would burn, civilizations would fall, and not even the strongest fleets could stop them. The Vritak prepared their defenses, but fear spread among their people. None had ever faced a threat so vast. Kiran watched silently. He did not feel fear the way the Vritak did. Instead, he felt a spark of excitement, curiosity mixed with determination. Something deep inside told him that this war was not just a test for the galaxy, but for him as well. He was small, yes, and human, yes, but perhaps he was the one who could do what no Vritak could imagine. The first signs of the approaching fleet appeared as strange blips on the star charts, shadows moving faster than any ship should move, signals that made the Vritak engines hum with tension, leaders argued. Alarm sirens echoed through the massive halls of their ships. Orders were shouted, commands repeated, but nothing seemed to slow the rising threat. Kiran moved quietly through the corridors. He watched the aliens panic. He studied the maps, memorized the enemy positions, and observed the strengths and weaknesses of the Vritak fleets. No one noticed him. To the Vritak, he was still just a child. But Kiran already knew something that no alien could predict. He was not like them. He could think differently, act differently. The first attack would come soon. Systems would fall and lives would be lost. The Vritak believed in strength, in power, in sheer force. But Kiran believed in something else, cleverness, speed, and the spark that made him human. He could see a way that might save them all. Far above, the stars shone cold and distant. The galaxy held its breath. And in a small ship, on a distant world, a human child raised by aliens watched the approaching darkness. He was alone, yet not. He had the knowledge of the Vritak and something no alien could ever understand. His own human mind. The war was coming. The galaxy did not know it yet, but the first step of a strange, dangerous, and unpredictable journey had begun, and Kiran, the child who should have been powerless, was about to show the galaxy that even in the darkest times, a single human could shine brighter than the stars. The stars were calm that night, but the galaxy was far from peaceful. Kieran, the human child raised by the Vrytak, sat quietly in the observation deck staring at the swirling patterns of distant suns. He could feel it, something inside him stirring, something the aliens could never understand. His mind was sharper, faster, and his instincts stronger than any Vrytak warrior of his age. The Vrytak trained him every day. They tried to mold him into one of their own, but Kieran never fit their rules perfectly. He questioned orders, tested limits, and solved problems in ways the aliens found impossible. When an instructor assigned a complex combat simulation, the Vrytak children followed step-by-step instructions, failing when unexpected events occurred. But Kieran thrived. He adapted instantly, turning the simulation into a challenge he could control. It wasn't just intelligence. Kieran had speed, agility, and reflexes beyond normal aliens. He could sense danger before it happened, anticipate attacks, and move in ways that defied their training methods. The elders began to notice. Whispers spread through the halls. The human is too fast, too clever, too unpredictable. Yet no one could explain why. Kieran did not seek attention. He preferred to watch, to learn, and to understand the world around him. He studied the ships, the weapons, the alien tactics. Each day he learned something new. He memorized battle maps, observed patterns in fleet movements, and noticed weaknesses no Vrytak would ever see. It was a power the aliens could not teach, a gift that came from being human. One evening, as Kieran wandered through the ship's training deck, he noticed a strange device left unattended. It was a holographic simulator designed for advanced tactical exercises. The Vrytak children struggled to solve its challenges. Kieran studied it quietly, testing theories, making rapid calculations, and predicting outcomes. Within minutes, he had solved scenarios that had baffled the instructors for months. The adults watched, stunned. The head instructor finally spoke. "This child, he is unlike any being we have trained. His mind works differently, faster, smarter." Kieran did not smile. He simply nodded and returned to the observation deck. Outside, the stars seemed darker, heavy with tension. The mysterious fleet from the edge of the galaxy was moving closer. Signals had grown stronger, readings more alarming. Entire sectors of planets could be destroyed before the Vrytak fleets could react. That night, Kieran made a choice. He would not wait for the aliens to act. He had the knowledge, the speed, and the mind to make a difference. He began secretly mapping the enemy fleet's movements, calculating weak points and imagining strategies. He even practiced maneuvers in the simulation that were considered impossible. The Vrytak saw him as a child, but he was preparing to do what no Vrytak warrior could. Kieran's training also included the strange alien rituals of discipline and combat. He learned to control his body perfectly, muscles, reflexes, senses, all in harmony. But the most important training he had was something the Vrytak could not teach: creativity. The ability to think outside patterns, to act in unpredictable ways. And in the coming battle, unpredictability would be the greatest weapon. Meanwhile, the Vrytak elders debated the incoming threat. Some called for full fleet mobilization, others argued for caution. Panic spread among them. Entire sectors were already sending distress signals. The human child was too small to command respect, too strange to understand their rigid traditions. Yet Kieran quietly observed everything: the arguments, the plans, the mistakes. He learned faster than any simulation or drill could teach. Days passed, and the alien fleet grew nearer. Ships from countless empires moved across space, their engines blazing trails through the darkness. Every Vrytak knew the galaxy had never faced such a force. Many feared it was the end of their civilization, and still Kieran prepared. He practiced drills alone, solved tactical simulations, and refined strategies. He experimented with alien technology in ways no Vrytak child would dare. Every day he grew stronger, not just in body, but in mind. And with every step he understood one truth clearly: the galaxy was in danger, and he might be the only one capable of saving it. One evening, as he studied the star charts, a sudden alert flashed on the console. Enemy ships had been detected in a nearby sector, far ahead of their expected path. Panic swept through the Vrytak fleet. Leaders shouted commands, children trained harder, and weapon systems were powered to maximum. But Kieran stayed calm. He had seen this pattern before, understood the movements, and even predicted the fleet's approach. For the first time, he realized the scale of his own power. While the Vrytak relied on sheer force, Kieran could think differently. He could plan, adapt, and act faster than anyone. And perhaps, just perhaps, he could save more than a single planet. He could save the entire galaxy. As the enemy fleet drew closer, the galaxy had never felt so tense. Ships blazed across the darkness of space, engines roaring, weapons charging. The distant fleet that had been slowly moving toward the Vrytak sector was now dangerously close. Panic spread through the alien command centers. The Vrytak leaders shouted orders, their voices echoing through the massive corridors of their warships. Children trained harder, soldiers prepared for battle, but fear hung heavy in the air. Kieran watched from the observation deck, his eyes sharp and calculating. He could feel the rhythm of the incoming fleet, the timing of their attacks, and the patterns of their formations. While the Vrytak relied on strength, speed, and brute force, Kieran relied on something different, his mind. His human instincts allowed him to see solutions that no Vrytak had considered. The first wave of enemy ships appeared as tiny blips on the star charts. They moved faster than anyone expected, slipping through patrols and scanners. The alarm sirens screamed across the fleet. Soldiers ran to their stations and weapon systems hummed to life. Yet Kieran remained calm. He knew where the fleet would strike first. Without hesitation, he moved through the corridors unnoticed by the Vrytak adults. He accessed the tactical simulation room, a holographic map of the battlefield. He studied the positions of the incoming ships and the strengths of their own defenses. Then he began making small, careful adjustments, rerouting fighters, redirecting energy to shields, and marking the weak points in the enemy formations. As the first battle began, chaos erupted. Lasers streaked across the darkness, explosions lit up the void, and war cries echoed through the ships. The Vrytak fought with all their strength, but their rigid tactics were not enough. Ships were destroyed, planets trembled under the fire, and thousands of lives were at risk. Kieran acted swiftly. Using the knowledge he had gained from simulations and his observations, he issued small, discreet commands to squads of Vrytak pilots. At first, they hesitated, unsure why a child was giving instructions. But they followed, and the results were immediate. Enemy ships faltered, caught in unexpected traps, and for the first time, the Vrytak had an advantage. The human's unpredictable mind worked like a weapon. Kieran directed small fighter teams to exploit gaps in the enemy lines. He rerouted power to shields just before heavy blasts arrived, saving entire ships from destruction. Every move was calculated, precise, and impossible for the Vrytak elders to predict. Slowly, the tide began to turn, not through brute force, but through cleverness and strategy. Still, the battle was far from over. The enemy was vast and relentless, and the Vrytak fleet suffered heavy losses. Kieran realized that even his planning had limits. He would need to take risks that could cost him everything. He devised a bold plan. He would lead a small team directly into the heart of the enemy formation, distracting their main fleet while the Vrytak prepared a counterattack. He called a group of young pilots, those who trusted him despite his youth. "Follow me and stay sharp," he said. There was no hesitation. His confidence, his understanding of the battle inspired them. Together, they darted into the enemy lines, weaving between blasts of energy, dodging explosions, and hitting weak points the Vrytak adults had overlooked. The enemy fleet began to break apart. Ships that seemed unstoppable were forced to retreat or be destroyed. Kieran's small team caused chaos and confusion, giving the Vrytak fleet a fighting chance. For the first time, the Vrytak realized that the human child was not just clever, he was extraordinary. Yet, the battle left scars. Many ships were lost, and the galaxy had only glimpsed the true power of the approaching enemy. Kieran felt exhaustion creeping in, but he also felt a strange exhilaration. He had done the impossible. He had saved lives that would have been lost and given hope to an empire that had doubted him. As the battle ended, the Vrytak leaders convened. Their voices were hushed, but their faces revealed awe and fear. "This child, he has changed everything," one elder whispered. Others nodded in agreement, realizing that Kieran's human mind was a weapon unlike any other, capable of thinking beyond alien rules, beyond rigid tactics, and beyond fear. Kieran returned to the observation deck, looking out at the stars. The enemy fleet was still out there, stronger and more numerous than ever. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. He knew that next time the stakes would be higher and the cost even greater. but for the first time he felt a sense of purpose.
He understood that being human, being different, was not a weakness, it was a strength.
The galaxy had underestimated him, the aliens had doubted him, and yet, here he was, a child who had already changed the course of a war. The stars glimmered cold and distant, but Kieran's mind burned bright. He had discovered the first part of his hidden power, the ability to think, act, and adapt where others could not. And as the Vrytak fleet regrouped and repaired, Kieran knew one truth clearly: the galaxy needed him, and the real war was only beginning. The unknown enemy waited in the darkness, unaware that a human child raised by aliens had already started to turn the tide, and the galaxy, vast and silent, was about to learn that sometimes the smallest beings could make the largest difference. The galaxy was far from safe. Even after the first battle, fear lingered like a shadow over the Vrytak fleet. Ships had been lost, soldiers injured, and entire star systems trembled at the approach of the unknown enemy. The elders argued endlessly, debating strategies and fleet formations, but no plan seemed strong enough. Each option felt insufficient, and panic was slowly creeping into even the most disciplined minds. Kieran sat alone in the observation deck, staring at the star charts. The first battle had proven something important. Brute force alone could not save the galaxy. He needed a plan no alien could imagine. His mind raced, tracing patterns, predicting enemy movements, and considering possibilities that the Vrytak elders would never see. He began sketching ideas in a small, hidden corner of the ship's tactical room. His strategy was risky, almost impossible, but it relied on his human creativity, the one thing the aliens lacked. He would not just defend the fleet. He would strike at the enemy in ways they could not anticipate. If successful, it could turn the tide of war. If it failed, it could destroy everything. Kieran decided to gather allies. Not all aliens trusted him, but a few young warriors who had seen his actions in the first battle followed him quietly. They were curious, intrigued by his confidence and unique thinking. "We will follow your lead," one whispered, eyes wide. Kieran nodded. Together they would prepare for a mission that no one else could attempt. He began training them in secret. They practiced unconventional maneuvers, learned to anticipate the enemy's reactions, and tested new tactics that the Vrytak elders would never approve. Kieran taught them to think creatively, to use the battlefield itself as a weapon, and to act unpredictably. They learned quickly, inspired by Kieran's intelligence and courage, but secrecy was essential. If the elders discovered his plan, they would likely reject it, believing it too dangerous or impossible. Kieran worked late into the alien nights, alone or with his small team, refining simulations and mapping the enemy fleet's every possible move. Each day he grew more confident. Each day he understood the true scale of his hidden power, the ability to see beyond rigid rules, to imagine possibilities others could not, and to turn human creativity into a weapon. One day, as he studied the maps, a warning signal flashed. Scouts had detected a massive portion of the enemy fleet moving ahead of schedule. Panic erupted across the ship. The elders shouted orders, their voices harsh and commanding, but their fear made their decisions slow and rigid. Kieran remained calm. He had predicted this exact movement and already knew how to counter it. He acted quickly, sending discreet messages to his small team. They prepared ambush points, calculated optimal positions, and readied special maneuvers. While the elders scrambled with conventional tactics, Kieran's group moved with precision, silently positioning themselves to strike where no one expected. As night fell over the distant stars, Kieran walked through the corridors, observing everything. He noticed small mistakes others made in preparation, errors in shields, weapon placements, and fleet positioning. Each observation fed his plan. Every mistake became an opportunity. He realized that sometimes the enemy's strength could be turned against them if only one thought differently. But the danger of discovery was growing. A young Vrytak officer had begun noticing Kieran's secret activities. Suspicion lingered in his gaze. If word reached the elders, Kieran's plan could be stopped before it even began. He had to be careful. His intelligence was a gift, but it could also make him a target. Despite the risk, Kieran pressed on. He spent hours studying enemy communication signals, learning patterns that the Vrytak considered indecipherable. He discovered subtle weaknesses, delays in command responses, predictable maneuvers, and gaps in shield coverage. Each piece of information became a building block in his secret plan. A plan that could save the galaxy, but only if executed perfectly. One evening, as he looked out at the glowing stars, Kieran felt a strange mixture of fear and excitement. The real challenge was coming. The enemy fleet was massive, powerful, and relentless. The Vritak could not face it alone, and yet he believed he could succeed, not because he was stronger, but because he would. The galaxy held its breath. The enemy fleet, vast and unrelenting, was only days away from striking the heart of the Vritak territory. Panic spread like wildfire among the ranks. Warships moved in disorganized formations. Alarms blared across the massive corridors, and the elders shouted orders that sometimes conflicted with one another. Time was slipping away, and the Vritak realized that sheer force alone could not save them. Kieran moved quietly through the ship's labyrinthine halls, his mind working faster than any engine in the fleet. The secret plan he had crafted in shadows was ready to be executed. He had trained a small team of trusted allies, mapped the enemy's movements, and identified weaknesses no one else had noticed. Every calculation, every maneuver had to be precise. One mistake could destroy everything. He gathered his team in the tactical room. Holographic displays shimmered with star maps, enemy positions, and fleet movements. "We move in less than 12 hours, Kieran said, his voice steady, calm. "Follow my orders exactly. Trust your instincts and watch for my signals. Timing is everything," the team nodded. They had seen Kieran's brilliance in the first battle, but this mission would test them like never before. They were about to do what no Vritak had attempted, a strike deep into enemy lines, targeting ships that had already crushed entire systems. The stakes were unimaginable. Hours passed as the small team moved into position. Kieran's plan was risky, relying on speed, stealth, and precise coordination. The enemy scouts patrolled the sector, but Kieran anticipated their paths, guiding his team through shadows of asteroid fields and the dark edges of unlit planets. Every move was calculated yet flexible. He adapted instantly to unexpected changes, predicting the enemy's reactions before they even acted. Suddenly, a warning signal flashed. An enemy detachment had detected them. Alarm screamed. Kieran's heart raced, but his expression remained calm. "Stay low, follow my lead," he instructed. They weaved through the attacking ships, dodging lasers and debris. The human child, once helpless, now moved like a force of nature, guiding his team through chaos with unerring precision. They reached the heart of the enemy formation. Massive warships, bristling with weapons, loomed above them. The Vritak elders would have balked at the idea of approaching such danger, but Kieran had calculated every step. Using a combination of stealth and rapid strikes, the team disabled the enemy shields in key areas, creating openings for the main fleet. Explosions lit up the void as Kieran's plan unfolded. Enemy ships faltered, trapped in maneuvers they could not anticipate. Kieran coordinated attacks, rerouted power to shields just in time to deflect incoming fire, and instructed his team to exploit every weakness. The Vritak fleet, watching from a distance, began to see the brilliance of the human child strategy. Yet the enemy was relentless. Reinforcements arrived faster than expected. Kieran realized that even his careful planning had limits. He would need to take risks, pushing his team to the edge. "Trust me, follow my instincts," he said. And they did, moving with him as one synchronized unit. Every strike, every dodge, every command was a calculated risk, one that could mean life or death. As the battle raged, Kieran discovered an unexpected advantage. The enemy fleet relied heavily on rigid formations and predictable patterns. Where the Vritak had failed, Kieran's human mind thrived. He anticipated movements, predicted attacks, and exploited weaknesses no alien could see. The tide began to turn. Ships that seemed unstoppable were forced to retreat or be destroyed. Chaos spread through the enemy ranks, but victory came at a cost. Many of Kieran's allies were injured, and some ships were lost in the assault. The human child felt the weight of responsibility heavier than ever. Every life, every planet depended on his decisions. Yet even in the darkest moments he refused to give in. The galaxy's hope rested on him, and he would not falter. By the end of the day, the enemy fleet had been stalled. Critical ships were disabled, formations broken, and morale shattered. Kieran's small team had achieved the impossible. The Vritak elders, once skeptical, now looked at him with awe and fear. They realized that this human child whom they had raised among them was not just clever, he was the key to survival. As Kieran returned to the observation deck, he looked out at the stars. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. The enemy was still out there, stronger and more numerous than anyone could imagine. The stakes would rise and the next confrontation would be even more dangerous. Yet Kieran felt a spark of determination. He had discovered the full extent of his hidden power, the ability to think faster, act unpredictably, and inspire others to follow him. He understood that being human, being different, was not a weakness, it was the galaxy's greatest weapon. The stars shone cold and distant, but Kieran's mind burned with focus and courage. The race against time had begun, and the galaxy's survival depended on his next moves. One human child raised by aliens was about to take a stand that no one else could. The enemy had been stalled, but the real challenge was just ahead. And Kieran, small yet brilliant, prepared for the battle that could decide the fate of every star in the galaxy. The stars were silent witnesses to the approaching storm. The enemy fleet, vast and relentless, now loomed close to the heart of the Vrytak sector. Entire systems trembled at its presence. Ships that had survived the previous battles now readied themselves for what could be the final confrontation. Panic buzzed through the corridors of the Vrytak command ships. Elders shouted orders, their voices strained with fear and desperation. The galaxy's fate hung by a fragile thread. Kieran stood on the observation deck, calm and focused. He had trained, planned, and fought every step of the way. He had guided his small team through impossible battles, outsmarted the enemy in ways the Vrytak could not comprehend. And now he faced the ultimate test. His human mind, sharp and unpredictable, was the galaxy's only advantage against the overwhelming force that threatened to destroy everything. The enemy fleet attacked in waves, each more powerful than the last. Massive warships fired energy beams that tore through space, obliterating anything in their path. Kieran's team moved with precision, dodging explosions and striking at critical weak points he had discovered earlier. Every maneuver was a calculated risk, every decision could mean life or death. Kieran's voice cut through the comms. Split into 3 groups. Hit the shield generators first, then focus on command ships. Trust your instincts, act fast, and watch my signals. His team followed without hesitation. They had come to trust him, to believe in his abilities. The human child who had once been powerless now commanded respect through action, strategy, and courage. Explosions lit up the void. Enemy ships faltered under the unexpected assaults, shields collapsing, engines failing. Kieran coordinated every strike, anticipating every counterattack and always staying one step ahead. He moved like a shadow through the battlefield, unseen yet guiding the tide of war. Yet the enemy was stronger than anyone had imagined. Reinforcements arrived from unknown sectors, threatening to overwhelm even Kieran's careful plans. One misstep could destroy entire fleets. The Vrytak elders grew frantic, unsure of what to do, but Kieran did not panic. He relied on what made him human: creativity, adaptability, and courage. He devised a bold maneuver. Kieran's team would lead a decoy attack, drawing the enemy into a trap he had designed. The main Vrytak fleet would then strike at their vulnerable core. Timing was critical. 1 second too late, one miscalculation, and the plan would fail. Kieran's pulse quickened, but his mind remained clear. This was the moment he had been preparing for. The decoy fleet charged forward. Enemy ships, confident in their strength, pursued without hesitation. Kieran's team danced through the chaos, using speed, skill, and cunning to survive. The main Vrytak fleet followed Kieran's signals, striking at the enemy's weak points precisely as he had predicted. Explosions ripped through the battlefield. Massive warships crumbled under the coordinated assault. The impossible was happening. The tide was turning. Amid the chaos, Kieran noticed the enemy flagship, a massive vessel, the command center of the invaders. It moved unpredictably, faster and more deadly than the others. He realized that defeating this ship was essential. "This is it," he whispered to his team. "We take it down and we save the galaxy." The final assault was brutal. Kieran led the strike personally, weaving through beams of energy, dodging missiles, and hitting critical points on the flagship. His team followed flawlessly, trusting his instincts, relying on his planning, and acting with courage he had inspired in them. The enemy fought fiercely, but Kieran's unpredictability, speed, and intellect outmatched them. With a final, precise strike, the flagship's core detonated. A shockwave of light and energy tore through the enemy fleet, destroying ships in all directions. The remaining invaders scattered, unable to regroup. The galaxy had survived. The impossible had been achieved, not by raw strength, but by a human mind raised among aliens, cleverer and braver than anyone could imagine. The Vrytak elders approached Kieran. Their faces were a mixture of awe, fear, and respect. "You have done what we never could," one elder said. Kieran simply nodded. He had no need for praise. He had seen the stakes, understood the risk, and acted. The galaxy's survival was enough. As Kieran returned to the observation deck, he looked out at the stars. They shone,